So, I saw the Apple Vision Pro at WWDC when I was at Apple Park, but I did not get to try it, but he did.
Okay, I've never experienced anything quite like this, but then I remember looking at the people and being like, holy shit. But in terms of like where you're looking, that was accurate. Like if you've gone, if you're ADAM, you're just like going. When I first used the Quest Pro, the very first time, and I used my fingers, I was like, wow, this is cool, right? It's quote unquote responsive. But then you try the Apple Vision Pro and you're like, Jesus Christ, this is way better.
And with that, I had a very in-depth conversation with him and also asked him about how he's related to Malaysia and what his favorite Malaysian food is.
I really like that. My favorite would be...
Okay, hi Dave. Thank you so much for joining me for this. It's the first time I'm going to do this sort of a video call. One of the reasons why I did this was because, I saw your video and I'm sure the whole world saw your video. And as a tech reviewer, the only time that we can, talk about a product properly is for us to experience it. So since unfortunately I did not get the time and the opportunity to test it out fully, and you did. So I got several questions to ask based on the Vision Pro's experience. And then towards the end, we're just going to have a little fun on asking some Malaysian related questions.
Okay.
So first and foremost, how are you, buddy? How's everything at home? All good?
I'm good. Yeah, the weather's getting really nice in Toronto, so...
What's the temperature like right now in Toronto?
Like mid-20s, but it's special. Today's like extra good. Look at us, we're losers. We're talking about weather. But the weather is nice right now.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I ask is because, I remember when we had this conversation about the weather in Malaysia, you did mention about how sticky it is.
Yeah, man.
So it's actually getting even stickier today. So today was like extremely hot. So I was like, oh, imagine if Dave was here today. Okay, let's jump into it. You're right. Let's not talk about the weather so much. First and foremost, Dave, I want to ask, you know how like certain people, especially tech reviewers, we are so into what are the rumors and what is going to be coming out soon. Now, this particular Apple headset was rumored to be released last year. And as close as we went to WWDC 2023, it was very close to, looks like it's something that is going to be happening with all the rumors, the leaks and stuff. So does Dave give a damn about rumors? That is one thing which I want to know. Are you the kind of person who goes like, so what's rumored to be released? Or you'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to wait for the event.
No, I care about rumors, not to the degree that of like really chasing after them and stuff like that. But I do feel that when interesting stuff pops up, I can't help but just be intrigued, right? When the Apple headset rumors first started popping out, it seemed impossible. It actually seemed like something that Apple would never get into, just because the technology is so removed from what they're normally doing. You know what I mean? It's like such a gap between what Apple does and what AR and VR is. But yeah, turns out it was real, all the rumors.
In terms of how you believed on how it's going to rumor to be looking like, was your guess that it's going to be looking like this, with a whole glass in front, or was your guess for it to be something like Meta's headset?
Yeah, so the weird thing is there were several rumors that there would be a screen up front, right? I don't know if you ever looked into it, but I thought they were there was no way. I was like, because the concept of that had never existed before. And I think the other thing is that if you hadn't seen Apple's headset before and someone just described a headset to you, like a VR or AR headset, and there was a screen on the front that would project your eyes, the average human who's trying to imagine that would be like, they can't imagine a good version of that. You know what I mean? Like it would look so stupid or weird at the very least. It would look really weird. And because when you try to imagine that, it doesn't really make sense. I just discredited those rumors. I was like, what are the chances of that? And I think a lot of people did the same. It's like, it just seems so unlikely. But then it comes out and you're like, oh my God, if you implement it like that, the way that Apple did it, it kind of works, maybe, but I didn't expect it. You?
For me, because the latest rumors were from when I saw the 9 to 5 Mac, and I kind of predicted that it's going to look like that, but I honestly was mind blown when I saw it in real life. It looks almost unreal, and when I saw it, it's like, oh my God, it looks like even better in person. Now, speaking of mind blowing, Dave, tell me about the whole process. because all the tech reviewers, the ones who tried it, you couldn't like shoot, like your experience, like you couldn't shoot. So was it
Yeah.
like a small little room, and when you entered the room, there's a calibration process you mentioned. Can you kind of run us through the whole entire process? Yeah.
Okay, I've never experienced anything quite like this. They had actually built a whole like temporary structure, but when you went into the structure, it felt completely like permanent. It seemed like you were walking to like a grand Apple store. It was really strange how well decorated it was, and it was like a waiting room with like chairs and all the woodwork that you'd expect in like a high-end Apple store. But then within that space were these tiny like mini rooms that were closed off, and then I guess the various people who got to try it just went into these mini rooms and got to experience it. So yeah, you go in, there's like a bit of a setup thing. I think they're scanning your face with a phone. Now it's been a couple weeks, so my memory of this is a little bit faded, but they scan your face with a phone, and then if you had vision correction, like if you had glasses or contacts, you would go into like a separate area where they would measure the distance between your pupils and do a whole eye thing to kind of get lenses inserted into the Vision Pro. But if you didn't have any kind of optical adjustment needed, you would that was it, just the face measurement. And then you go into the room, and it was two people who like were guiding the, I guess, presentation or demo. It wasn't like you couldn't really interact with it truly freely. It was a very guided, like you were on a rail and you were just like on this rail, and you could like do things that they were telling you to do, but you couldn't like explore. At least I didn't feel comfortable like not listening to them and just like going off the rails. But yeah, you put it on, and oh yeah, they did mention. I mean, am I going into too much detail? I don't know.
No,
if you
no,
wanna go
I
into,
love
like,
the details. That's what exactly what we
Sure.
need. Please.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's sitting on a table in front of you when you walk into the room, and they explain, this is the Vision Pro, and it looks just like the demo units you saw, like floating in that room that we were all in. And then they tell you to put it on, and they tell you not to crank the headset too tight. That was one thing I remembered, because I feel like a lot of people, if you're not familiar with headsets, your instinct is to like crank it really tight so it's snug, right? But they tell you just like up front, don't crank it. And I also imagine that the way that the hardware worked, because it's like a BOA like ratchet system that like tightens the thing. So I feel like unless you're familiar with it, it's really easy to over tighten those things and it to be an uncomfortable experience. Yeah, so put it on, and I do remember it was strangely heavy. Like all the rumors were saying that it'd be this ultra lightweight carbon fiber thing, and I was expecting it to be light because at that point we'd seen it, but we'd never touched it, right? So I lifted it up, I was like, wow, this is heavier than I thought. And then when I put it on, I was like, okay, this is definitely heavier than I thought. And then the other thing is that all the units that we saw in that room, and also the units that we saw in like the presentations and stuff, they didn't have a headband on the top. It was just like a thick, almost like diving headband mask back thing, and then just the visor up front. But this had a top band to kind of alleviate the weight of it. And I remember actually thinking, if they didn't have this top band, it would be very heavy. Like it'd be noticeable. But yeah, because every other headset that I've used, like all the Quest stuff, if it's heavy, they always have a top band. And even the lighter weight stuff, like a top band it helps to alleviate that weight. Okay, so I put it on, and my first reaction I remember was the pass through. So it's already activated. I could see the two people that were in the room now, and I remember the color of the room, like because I just put it on, right? I remember the room looking a very particular way in terms of its color. Like the yellows looked a certain way, the reds looked a certain way, and when I put it on, it didn't look exactly like how my eyes had seen it 1 second before. So the color of the screen wasn't as, color accurate as natural light rays. Expectedly so, but it was pretty good. But then I remember looking at the people and being like, holy shit, like these look like real people in here. Because any kind of pass-through I've seen before, there's obviously pixelation, there's artifacts, but it wasn't just the visual like quality and the image quality, it was like the way that they were moving. It's like they were moving like it was just real life. colors were off, but movement was on point, and then they were talking, right? I could hear them just through your natural, just, it wasn't like projected through the speaker or anything, it was just like their voice, but their mouths were moving in sync to the audio, which, right, that's difficult. When you edit videos, right, if you're off by even a couple frames, it looks weird, but this was on point. You're like, okay, the pass-through is super, super fast. And then the presentation started. They're like, okay, click on this, do this. So the first thing they do is they tell you about the eye tracking. They're like, this thing has eye tracking, so we're going to do a little calibration. They're like, look at this dot, look at this dot, look at this dot. So you're wearing this thing, and like the screen goes into like a full immersive thing. You're not seeing the room anymore, and you're seeing just like a calibration program. And it's like you track the dots, and then once it does it, now you're in the room again, and you can pull up an augmented reality operating system. How did it work? I think you oh yeah, they also do like the clicking thing, right? Where you like, when you look at a dot, you like click with your fingers to like activate it, and then that's the calibration process. And then once you're in it, you're like, once you're in the operating system, they tell you to pull things up, and it's like, it's super responsive and strangely like accurate in that process.
Fantastic. I think that actually answers my next question about controls and latency, because things like this, like I've also tried many headsets, the ones like from Meta, and also even like this upcoming brand called Pico from China. Pretty decent, but not as
Picos.
close.
They're good.
Yeah, so pretty decent, but it's still very robotic, very digital kind of feel. Tell us about the process, about the pass-through, right? Using the crown. Is it a similar feel of the Apple's AirPods Max, the dial? Is it exactly, or is it bigger, or is it, what was the experience of the dial specifically?
That's interesting. I remember spinning it because they do tell you during the presentation to spin it. I think it had clicks. Like, I think it went click, 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 click. Very like, I think it did. I don't remember for sure. The size, I didn't really examine this, but it felt normal, like similar to the AirPod Max. I would say though that dial was not utilized very well in the demo, mainly because I feel like if you're going to actually use that, like what does a regular person use that dial for, right? It's not just like play around and be like, oh, it's on and off, on and off. You would actually be in a situation where you would actually want to dial things, for your workflow, or for if you want to like, see things in the room or whatever. I feel like in order to really experience what that's actually like the user has to actually want to use it with purpose, not just like playing with it. Because the way that we did it in the demo was, there was like I think they were playing like Avatar or something, and you were watching Avatar in the room, like it was somehow like projected against the wall of that like demo room. And then when you spun the dial, you could immerse yourself into this like artificial like mountain scene while still watching the movie, right? And it's like, if you want to come back to reality, you can spin it. So that was neat and all, but just I didn't really get a good sense of what it could or couldn't do.
Was the dial seamless, like going from like reality to inside the whole experience? Was it seamless, like as you adjust it, like did it really go like, okay, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, or how is that like?
Okay, that's a good question. So one thing I noticed, it's weird when you ask these things, like your brain kind of like goes into these thoughts that I never even thought before. But I do remember now when I was spinning, it was too granular. Like I needed to spin it like 3 times to just get it to where I thought it'd be. So it's like very precise control. It's like you can dial it into like, if you imagine like opacity, it feels like every revolution is like another 30% opacity. It's like it takes a long time to get to the full thing. But it's such a small dial that if you want to, you just like flick, 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 you're fully in, right? But yeah. But it was, I thought it was strange that how granular it was, because why would you need that kind of precision? But I guess it's cool.
Speaking of controls, you mentioned there's no latency in terms of the eye tracking, so that was great. How about did you manage to try the virtual keyboard experience and also the voice control? Was that something that you managed to test out as well?
The voice control, I don't know if it was working yet. I do remember them saying that you could do it. I didn't test it. I was more like into the keyboard. So latency is one of those things where in order to really get a gauge on latency, you have to experience like latency free and then like the opposite of that, right? And I think I've never experienced eye tracking like this with controls that were this responsive. So I don't know how much quote unquote latency there was. Like if you compare it to a Quest Pro, I've never used it, but they have eye tracking. Well, not eye tracking. They have like finger clicks. When I first used the Quest Pro, the very first time, and I used my fingers, I was like, wow, this is cool, right? It's quote unquote responsive. But then you try the Apple Vision Pro and you're like, Jesus Christ, this is way better in terms of just picking up on what you're actually trying to do. So it seemed like it was latency free, but I'm not really sure.
How about the virtual keyboard? Did you try that out or you didn't?
Yeah, I tried. I don't feel like that's a great way to input anything. Like imagine typing a key on a keyboard, but like you're not even just tapping, right? You got to like click while you tap. So it's a little bit strange. But in terms of like where you're looking, that was accurate. Like if you can, if you're ADAM, you're just like going. You just right, and it's fast in terms of tracking it, but it is weird to type like this.
I'm just trying. The reason why I ask is because I think no one has spoken about can we like run Final Cut Pro and edit videos virtually. That'd be kind of interesting.
I think if you wanted to, you would need to use a mouse and keyboard. I think it's possible. I think that the thing has the capability to do it. Whether or not you want to do it is a whole separate question, but I think you could do it.
Let's talk about quality and the resolution, right?
Sure.
I mean, in the end of the day, we all know that resolution, like, when you have a 6K monitor or an 8K TV, as you put your face as close as possible to the TV, you can still see some amount of pixels there. Is it still as sharp and as clear as how it's supposed to be, or you can still see those tiny little pixels? Because you are the kind of person who, like pixel peak, and you are like me, use Blackmagic 6K video shooting on YouTube and stuff. So I'm sure that you can really appreciate like those really sharp resolutions. So tell us and walk us through that experience.
So it's not perfect. You can definitely look at pixels, but with VR, with that headsets, it's not resolution so much. Like you have to take the resolution with the field of view, right? So if you have, two 4K screens, but you have a massive field of view, let's say like 140, you'll really see the pixels. But if you tighten that field of view to like, let's say if you're crazy and you only have a 90-degree field of view, then it'll look really sharp. So this is a 4K headset. If I had to guess, like 4K per eye, but if I had to guess in terms of field of view, there was some black stuff on the side. So I don't know how familiar you are with the headsets, but like the human vision is about 135 degrees naturally. We can't see full 180. Like if you put your hands straight out, you can't see your hands, but about 140 degrees, 135, you can start to see. That's natural human vision. This thing was less than that. I would guess like 110 degrees. So there's some black stuff on the sides. I'm waving my arms right now, and I realize you guys can't see anything with my arms. Okay, but so it's not 140. It's a little bit smaller than that. So like 135. Like 110. But because of that, 4K per eye is not perfect. You're gonna see pixelation. I don't know what PPD would be, but it's not perfect. But it's sharp enough. I feel like, again, for a first generation product, like the resolution it's not even that important. I'm convinced that they could have gone with a much lower resolution and it'd still be a viable product, right? In terms of like the experience that people get out of it. I think the biggest advantage of high resolution doesn't come in the actual programs and apps and like even text and stuff. I think that's fine. It's more the interaction with the real world, like that pass-through stuff. When you have higher resolution, it just looks ever so more realistic. So I think that's important to Apple's version.
Next question would be based on, is Dave 2D the kind of person who has motion sickness easily? And if yes or no, how was the motion sickness like? I mean, was there any sort of a motion sickness that you experienced? But I want to know, can Dave 2D go on a roller coaster and survive?
That's a great question. So I get motion sick in certain scenarios, but otherwise I'm like sometimes I'm perfectly fine. I don't know. I've never really been able to nail it. VR in general, I don't get motion sick at all. Things that spin around like rides, like a teacup ride that you're just spinning in circles. Oh, dude, I do not want to do that stuff. That'll get me motion sick. But I didn't feel motion sickness at all on the Apple headset. But the other thing is I've used so much VR. Like over the past 2 years, like I spent a lot of time in VR, probably more than most tech YouTubers. One of the reasons why I spend so much time in VR is because of like there's like fitness games, like boxing games, and I just find them like stupidly fun and incredibly good like workouts that I'm just like every day I'm like 30-40 minutes in these stupid headsets because they're just I work out with them. So I think I've gotten used to it and I'm more tolerant of VR motion. But that being said, I didn't feel anything at all with the Apple stuff.
Nice. Walk us through the FaceTime call experience.
So they're like, yeah, someone's going to give you a call from another campus or whatever, from like the main campus. So they call, and I actually, for a split second, I was like, this is like a robocall, right? Like this isn't a real person. They just got like some demo bot to do it because the dude on the other end wasn't particularly enthusiastic or animated. He was like, hello, David. How are you? I was like, okay. But then I don't remember what I asked him, but I'm like, are you a real person? He's like, yes, I am. And I was like, yeah, they could have gotten a bot to say that. But then I asked him something else. I forget what it was. Something about like what he ate or something. And he laughed, right? And I was like, oh my God, it is a real person. Okay, so they have a real person call you. The image, like, that avatar that pops up. So it's using the 3D avatar. It was decent. I don't know how familiar you are with like the whole uncanny valley thing, but like it was decent. I didn't think it was a particularly amazing 3D avatar, but it was good enough. I didn't find it like repulsive or anything, but it was okay.
Okay, I'm sure you appreciate audio as much as I do. How was the audio experience? Like, is it like
phenomenal?
Yeah, so is it like bone conduction style, whereby because it's not exactly going into the ears, right?
Yeah. So I thought the same. I thought it was bone conduction, like right when I went in, because I'm like, how could they, like, why are the speakers so far forward from your ear? But it's not bone conduction, at least not from what I could tell. It's just projected towards your ear. And I think the reason why they do it, like I asked them, but I don't know if I got a straight answer, but I think if I had to guess, it's because, it's supposed to be AR, right? Not VR. So they try to have your kind of surrounding audio environment come into your ears. Yeah, but they sound really good. If I had to guess, they really just look like laptop speakers. Like the way that they're shaped, the size of them, they really just look like they just took some good drivers out of their MacBooks and just stuck them right there, and they just fire them towards your ears.
Tell us about the birthday party experience, because a lot of reviewers were speaking about how really immersive that experience is. So yeah,
that was really weird. Have you seen Harry Potter?
Yeah, of course.
Like when I was describing to my wife what it was like, in Harry Potter, there's that pensive. When Harry like sticks his head into this like thing, and you can see the memories of other people.
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah.
And the way that they kind of do it in the movies, it's like you go into this well, and then you immerse into this environment, and nobody there can see you, right? It's just like history replaying itself. It's a memory, and you're just like a bystander. You're like a fly on the wall watching history repeat itself. And that's what it feels like to a certain degree. You just feel like you weren't there, but somehow you're there now. That's what it felt like. Now, the thing I thought was like, this is already cool watching these video clips and moving picture clips of people I don't even know. It's already neat. Can you imagine what it would be like if this was like people that were significant to you? Like, let's say like, a relative that passed away, or like, it's like, it's so weird to be able to relive moments like that. It's super cool. I don't want to oversell it though. In terms of the actual visuals, when you're in it, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel real. It feels like somewhat realistic, but when you move your head around, like the depth like the camera that captured all the depth data, it's capturing it in a similar way to like a 3D movie, right? If you're watching a 3D movie, like there's like layers of depth to it. It doesn't feel 100% real though, but it is weird. It's neat.
He's weirdly real.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about battery charging, because this is also something which I wondered how it works. So from all the visuals I saw, they were using this sort of like, it looks like a MagSafe, like, you know, like your MagSafe puck like this. Was it a similar style, or did you manage to like take out the puck? Is that really a MagSafe puck, and how strong were the magnets?
So it's not. I didn't get to detach it, or I think I saw them put it on. I forget. I remember seeing it, but I didn't do it myself. It's not magnetic only. It might be magnetic, but there's like a mechanical element to it that locks it in. It looks very similar to a MagSafe puck though, but thicker. The MagSafe pucks are a lot smaller. Like you're talking about the ones for charging like an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. Yeah. It's definitely thicker than that, at least my memory of it. But it's seemingly the same size. And then the cable comes off it. It's a braided cable. I remember the cable being like, kind of like their MacBook cables, like braided, but yeah, not super thick. And that I do remember when I was using it, I could tell that I was tethered. Like, because every headset that I've used over the past year or two has been an untethered headset. Like I used to use like the HTC Vive and the Vive Pro, and like those had lots of cables. And I remember when the first kind of like wireless headsets came out, I was like, this is awesome. This is way better. Like you're just, the mobility and just like the immersion is infinitely better when you're not tethered. But having that tether there, all it takes is like your hands just brush the cable, or like, you know what I mean? And then you're like, I am in VR, or I am in AR. But if you have no cables and you never touch it, the immersion is just a little bit deeper.
Was it in a way while you were, because you're going through the demo and it was charging while you're using it, right? So if that was the case, was it in a way when you're moving, or?
No, it was never in the way. No. You're seated, right? The demo I should have explained, like you're on a couch. So even if you wanted to run around, you couldn't really. Actually, I take that back. At the end of the demo, you do walk forwards a little bit to kind of experience it, but they tell you to hold on to the pack when you do that, or put it in your pocket. And that really breaks the immersion, right? Because now you're seated the whole time, and then like, okay, now you got to do this thing, but you got to hold on to a thing. Not that it's terrible, but it's definitely a different experience from a truly wireless headset.
All right. Before we talk about the price, I just want to go through the final other questions based on the experience. Like, based on what I again gathered, there was like this sort of a dinosaur thing walking in, and the butterfly going on your finger. Can you just explain a bit more on that experience, and how is it different than anything that you have ever experienced before this?
I would say that the dinosaur thing was not that neat to me, because I'd seen, like, I think that'd be neat for people who've never experienced like a lot of VR, but that was a fairly VR-like experience, right? The wall in front of you opens up, like the wall in the demo room, because you're in pass-through mode, right? And you can see the picture frames and stuff on the thing. They're like, hey, walk forward, go check out the picture frames, and all of a sudden, the picture frames, like this kind of, it's like a wall that appears, and then this dinosaur comes out. So that was kind of neat. Actually, I think described the order incorrectly there, but same idea. Okay, before that though, the butterfly comes out. There's like the thing opens, then a butterfly comes out, and they tell you to put your finger out, and then the butterfly lands on your finger. Now this is technology that I'm pretty sure the Quest Pro could do this easily as well. It's like it's tracking your hands, tracking your finger, and then it's trying to just drop this animated butterfly onto it. Now my finger was moving a little bit, and when I moved it a little bit, the butterfly was glitching out a little. Like it wasn't tracking it perfectly, right? And I was doing it on purpose. I'm like, can they track this thing wiggling around? And the butterfly was like jittering around. It's like it's trying to do its best to kind of track it. And it's difficult, right? This is a 3D surface, and you're rotating it around and moving it around. So the calculations of getting this butterfly to sit on your finger is tough. but it didn't do it perfectly. But I don't. Yeah, that wasn't that quote unquote special to me because I feel like that experience has been done on other headsets. But yeah, it was neat. But the resolution again was good. You could see like the details on that dinosaur and the details on the whole scene pretty nicely.
Okay, let's talk about the price. I mean, there's a huge debate on the price. In a very quick nutshell, based on what you have experienced, Dave, is it something that you feel a lot of people is going to get it? Is this something that Dave 2D would recommend to people, or Dave Lee would recommend to people who has the money? He said, you know what, I just want to experience this. I'm going to buy at least one headset, right? So tell me about what is your idea in terms of the price that has been offered.
I mean, the whole, like, whether or not to recommend it, I don't think that's just such an individual person question, right? I think the more interesting conversation is, I feel like, I thought it was strange, and I kind of touched on this briefly in my video on it. It's like, I thought it was strange that Apple launched a headset with the front screen as their like main, as their main kind of feature. Like, that front screen, I'm sure, costs a lot of money, and it jacks up the price of this product, right? And I think it's like, okay, think about any other Apple product that's ever launched. When they first introduce a product, like a phone, iPad, watch, they don't come out with the ultra version first. You know what I mean? They come out with like a basic version, and they're like, hey guys, we got this new thing. Everyone come check it out at a fairly reasonable price point. It's not super cheap. You know, it's not the SE version, but certainly not the Pro Ultra version. And I felt like they came out of the gate with the Ultra version. Like, hey, we got this thing that's decked out with this screen on the front that I think a lot of people will never even use. But it's like, it was strange to me that they launched this as product one instead of like a more toned down version that didn't have the front screen. So it's just a little bit cheaper, and then like developers can, right? And there's like more people are buying it. And then a year, two down the line, they come out with the Pro version then. So I don't know. That was a little bit weird to me because I feel like now, because it's a $3,500 headset or more, depending on the currency and stuff, but it's like, it's super expensive. So many people are just like, no way. Like, there's no shot that I would ever buy this thing. That thing is the price of like a really high-end MacBook, which is already out of reach of many people who would kill for something like that for their work. You know what I mean? Like, how many people would be like, I wish I could buy a MacBook Pro so that my workflow is a little bit faster, but I can't afford it. There's tons of people, right? And then now we're talking about people in that same price point be like, here's this optional fun thing that you can experience that's also $3,500. I think it's just like the user base is going to be really small, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right about how usually, like for example, like the iMac, it was the iMac first and it's the iMac Pro. It is quite interesting of how they did the reverse by releasing a Pro product first. So I'm going to put you in the spot because
Sure.
you mentioned that, do you think or would you predict that Apple's going to have like a SE version or a C version?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Eventually. Yeah, 100% they will, assuming that this product doesn't tank horribly. And even if it did, even if the Vision Pro tanked horribly, I still think they're super committed to releasing a cheaper version, at least to kind of fulfill the cycle of generation one. But yeah, that's the other thing. If this thing in its current state is $3,500, my question that goes into my head is like, how much could they possibly strip out of this product and still retain a good user experience? You know what I'm saying? Like, you remove the front screen, you save $700. Okay, so now down to 3,000. Okay, and then you start dropping resolution. If you start dropping resolution to be able to lower the price, like, I don't know, man. How much resolution can you lose before it's no longer a Apple, reality experience or vision experience? It's I don't know.
That'll be quite interesting to see, but that was my next question, that if they are going to come up with a non-pro version, what are the things they're going to strip off? Because I feel like the screen is so, I guess it's still very important for them to have. So if they're going to remove that, then it's going to be like just another headset. So it'll be interesting to see it. Like I said, I'm just putting you in a spot. I'm not going to use it against you in the future. Hey, you said that I was wrong.
No.
Yeah, so That's a great idea and thought in terms of how everything is done in terms of the price. For me, yes, it is a very high price, but I'm definitely going to get it.
Are you really?
Yeah, I am definitely going to get it. I'm just waiting for it to. But here's the thing, because we're all the way here in Malaysia, it's not going to be released in Malaysia first. So hopefully next year's dub. Hopefully when I'm going to go there, I'm definitely going to buy myself one, buddy. I am.
Oh, and then bring it back. Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I understand everybody has their own school of thoughts about this kind of stuff, and I respect everybody's opinion. But I think for me, I am definitely going to get it. Yes, it's expensive. I'm just going to take my credit card and swipe and just think about it later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really cheap when it comes to buying stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't judge.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's like we're exposed, like I'm sure you are as well, right? We're just exposed to so much technology that I feel like, you know, if you're going to spend money on stuff, I'm just like really picky about where I actually spend money.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so a lot of people who have been watching you, and even like for me, following the channel for the longest time, did not guess that, you know, your family or even like you are related with Malaysia. So can you just can you just tell everybody in a very short or in a nutshell how does Dave 2D or how does Dave Lee relate to Malaysia?
So my parents they met there. They were both. My dad was born in Malaysia. My mom was not, but she ended up going to school and stuff there. So Malaysia was a big part of my family's life. When I was a kid, I went there a couple times. And I never loved it as a kid because when you're young and you go to like Southeast Asia and everything's just like super hot. That's like the first thing I always remember. It's like, oh my God, everything's like so hot. But then as I got older, there was a time when I'm like, I started to like it more because I started to enjoy the food more. And that was probably my biggest draw to Malaysia. It's like the food is arguably the best food in the world. I mean, I love it. Like all the, even like the nasi lemak for like having access to something like that. I know for you guys, it's nothing, right? It's like literally breakfast junk. But to me, it's like anytime I see it, it's so special because it's like, it's awesome. But the food is really good there. I love it.
So I want to ask, I mean, since you mentioned about Malaysian food, that was my next question. So what is your favorite food? Is it nasi lemak or is it something else?
No, that's not my. I really like that. My favorite would be, oh goddamn, like chao kui tao is really good.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, there's so much stuff. Like all the soups, all the curries, like they're all good, man. There's like very little Malaysian food that I don't love. That's the truth. So yeah, it's good. But I haven't been back in like for like pleasure in a while. I used to go there reasonably often for work, like not YouTube work, but like my regular work. But when I would go there, it would just be like airport to the work and then back to airport and out. I never got to really enjoy Malaysia for what it was.
Well, now that we know each other, you know what to do. Just extend it a couple of days.
You gotta go there all the time, right?
Yeah, definitely going to call Jason to also come and join us as well. Final thing, other than Malaysian food, what besides the amazing weather that we have here in Malaysia, what is the one thing that Malaysia has which you wish that Canada has?
Ooh. This is going to be a weird one, but there is something that you guys have that's I wish was here. It's your diving. So in Sabah.
Diving?
Yeah.
Oh, diving, like diving,
diving.
like water diving.
Yeah.
Oh, so you love diving. That's interesting.
It's not like I do it often or anything, but I did go on a trip out there once and like it was awesome. It's like Sipadan, it was like so cool. And we don't have anything like that here, obviously. But I would love for that. Because then you could surf and stuff. It'd be awesome. But it's just Malaysia.
All right, Dave. I think that is the conclusion for our whole entire talk and discussion. First of all, thank you so much once again for taking time to do this.
Thanks for having me.
It's been like a journey for me following you. Like I mentioned, you're one of the best storytellers ever on YouTube. So, and I appreciate you saying yes. Every single time when there's a review, I always tell, my friends, tell them, just check out what Dave 2D has to say.
Oh, that's crazy.
So thanks you,
man.
Dave, for saying yes. I am glad that we had this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully I can see you soon, buddy.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, see you, dude.